She poked her in the eye, got nothing, but watch what Caitlin did next. What you're about to see has the entire WNBA asking one question: how is this not a foul? But hold on, because what happened after this moment is going to change everything you think you know about this league. Stay with me till the end, because the third clip is the one nobody is talking about yet. Quick one before we start. If you haven't already, smash that subscribe button and hit the bell. This story is going to keep developing, and you do not want to be the last one in your group chat to know what happens next. A poke, a smirk, and a historic night that exposed the whole league. All right, let's just get straight into it, because the more you sit with this story, the stranger it gets. We're talking about DiJonai Carrington, we're talking about Caitlin Clark, and we're talking about a moment from the Indiana Fever's playoff run that, frankly, should have ended the conversation about how this league treats its brightest star. But it didn't. It opened a much bigger one. And before you scroll away thinking this is just another angry basketball take, I promise you, the data we're about to walk through is going to back up every single emotional reaction you've already seen online. Let's start where the cameras caught something nobody on the floor wanted to talk about. The eye poke that started everything. It was the Fever against the Connecticut Sun, playoff basketball, and the tension was already sky high before tip-off. Caitlin Clark had been taking hits all series. That's not opinion. You can pull up the game logs. She was the most fouled guard in the league heading into that matchup, full stop. But on one play in particular, the contact went beyond a foul. You can see the replay clearly. The ball is in the air. DiJonai Carrington reaches, but she's not going for the ball. She misses the ball with an open palm, and then you watch her hand close into this pointed shape, and it drives straight into Caitlin Clark's eye. Not once, twice, right in the eye. And here's where it gets wild. There was no whistle. There was no foul. There was no flagrant. There was no review. Nothing. Now, was it intentional? Carrington said no. She said she was going for the ball. She said afterward she didn't even know she'd made contact. That's her right to say. But I'm going to let you sit with two things. One, if you watch the slow motion footage, the ball is clearly several inches away from her hand when the contact happens. And two, this isn't the first time her name has come up in a conversation like this. There was a moment earlier in the season where she made contact near Clark's face that went uncalled and went viral for the exact same reason. Same kind of contact, same outcome, same silence from the officials. Coincidence is a word people use when they don't want to look at a pattern. Make of that what you will. Now, here's the part that makes this more than just an eye poke video, because while the league and the officials were looking the other way, Caitlin Clark was busy making history. The line that should have been headline news, drop this number into your brain. 5. That's how many times Caitlin Clark has recorded 30 points and 10 assists in a single WNBA game. Now, here's the other side of that number. Everyone else in the entire history of this league combined has done it 4 times. 5. 2-4 by herself. Let me say that again for the people in the back who were typing fast while the recap was on. One player has more 30 and 10 games than every single player who has ever put on a WNBA jersey combined. That is not a hot streak. That is not a couple of games against weak teams on a soft schedule. That is a generational takeover of an entire statistical category at the most demanding position on the floor. And she did it while she was getting hit on every single possession. That's the part the highlight reels kept skipping past. The free throw numbers that tell the real story. Look, I'm not the type to scream rigged from the rooftops. I want to show you the receipts. Then you decide. Over her last stretch of 12 quarters, that's 12 full periods of basketball, Caitlin Clark made only 8 non-technical free throws. 8. In 12 quarters. That's a guard who leads the league in being fouled, who's literally being grabbed, scratched, shoved, and held on drives, and she's at the line 8 times. Now compare that to what you probably remember from other stars around the league. You see the same names going to the line over and over and over. Some of them shoot 10, 12, 15 free throws in a game, and nobody's grabbing their arms. Nobody's hip checking them midair. Nobody's poking them in the face. So you tell me, if she is absorbing the most contact, more than anyone else at her position, and she's going to the line the least among the top scorers, then where is the contact going? Right? Where is the contact going? This is the kind of number that should be on every sports show in the country. Instead, most people are arguing about whether her teammates should shoot more, or whether her coach should run different sets, or whether she's really a point guard. Meanwhile, the actual evidence, the actual box score evidence, is suggesting something else. The evidence is suggesting the whistle has selective hearing. The play that floated everyone. Okay, pause the data for a second. Now let me take you into one specific game moment that broke the internet. It's the Fever versus the Chicago Sky. And the moment that has been screenshotted, shared, and replayed a million times is this. DiJonai Carrington basically walks up to Caitlin Clark, bumps her, shoves her mid-dribble, and then, wait for it, throws her head back like she just took the hardest hit of her life. Clark didn't even look at her. Caitlin kept dribbling. She didn't flinch. She didn't react. And then Carrington does it again. That's the clip everyone's been passing around. Now, the league did not call a foul on either play. Not one. 2 separate incidents of contact, 0 whistles. And look, I'm going to be balanced about this because we should be. Hard fouls happen every game. Contact happens every game. Some plays are 50-50, and you're going to disagree with the official. That's just basketball. But here's the line that I think every reasonable fan, Sky fans, Fever fans, neutral fans should be able to agree on. When a defender runs into a ball handler, shoves her, and then procedurally falls down and acts like she got hit, that's not defense. And the fact that the clip happened twice in one game to the same player and on the same possession, that is now a pattern, not an accident. By the way, drop in the comments. Have you ever seen this kind of thing happen to any other player in the league, or just her? Honest question. I want to see what you think. The flagrant stat nobody wants to read. Now we go to the harder data. In the 2024 season, Caitlin Clark was on the receiving end of approximately 17%. That's 17%, yeah, of every flagrant foul called in the entire WNBA. Read that again. One player, taking nearly 1 in 5 of the most violent fouls the league officially classifies as excessive. That's not a sample size issue. That's the whole season. And when you break down where those fouls were coming from, a huge chunk of them involved the Chicago Sky. A reported 80% of the flagrant fouls against Clark came from one team in the league. One team. 80%. I'm not going to tell you what that means. The numbers speak. But let's just say, if you're trying to figure out which team has built a defensive identity around make her feel the contact, you now have the data to answer that question without guessing. And this is also why the comparison to other stars is fair. You can't show me a player who averages fewer free throw attempts, who's also absorbing more violent contact, and tell me the system is working the way it should. That's not how system works. The 45-point game that proved the point now. Let me take you back to a Fever win that flew under the radar of a lot of casual fans. Caitlin Clark dropped 45 points and dropped 10 assists in the same game. That was the first 40-point, 10-assist game in WNBA history, ever. She was the first person to ever do it in the history of the league. 28 years of basketball, and that line on the stat sheet had never been crossed. Until her. And it wasn't some empty calorie game either. The Fever needed every single one of those buckets. It was a win that basically kept their playoff push alive in that stretch of the season. So what did the talking heads say afterward? A lot of them said, she needed to take more shots. Some said, she has to get her teammates more involved. A few even said, she should be more efficient. But here's the part nobody covered. She was getting hit the entire game. Hit on the perimeter, hit on drives, hit on closeouts. And she still made history. That's not me being a fan. That's me reading the box score. Which gets me into something I want to break down really carefully, because it's the part of the story that I think has been the most misunderstood by people who don't watch the film. What they're saying versus what the film shows. Here's the counter-narrative that you'll hear in some circles. Caitlin Clark draws a lot of fouls and gets hyped. The other stars don't get that treatment. Okay, let's play that out. If you actually go watch the film, you will see that defenders are reaching in more, are holding more, are making more extra contact than they do on other players. But the whistles are popping fewer times when she's the one absorbing it. That's the mismatch. That's where the gap is. It is not that Clark is being waved to the line every time someone touches her. In fact, it's the opposite. She's playing through contact at a higher rate than her peers, and she's getting to the line less. So the "she gets every whistle" argument doesn't even hold up when you break down the numbers. What the numbers show is that she's not getting the whistles that the contact she's receiving should be producing. And that is a different story entirely. It is not a story about favoritism. It is a story about the opposite of favoritism. And that is the part that I think a lot of people are refusing to engage with honestly. The Sophie Cunningham incident that got one of them suspended. Now we come back to DiJonai Carrington because her name came up again, and this time the league DID take action. During the August matchup between the Fever and the Sky, Carrington fouled Sophie Cunningham hard, and I'm talking hard late in the game. The kind of hard that got her ejected. The kind of hard that even the broadcast crew reacted to in real time. She picked up a flagrant-2 and was immediately tossed. The foul was so obvious that the officials didn't have a choice. And here's the piece that I think connects everything. After she got ejected, Carrington posted about it on social media. The post itself sparked a fresh round of debate. The content of the post got screenshotted, the screenshots got shared, and the conversation got louder. The Sky's official channels ended up distancing themselves from what was said. The league office did not announce further punishment beyond the flagrant-2 at the time. But now, here's the real question. If that contact warranted a flagrant-2 and an ejection, why didn't the eye poke on Caitlin Clark warrant anything? Why didn't the 2 bumps during the dribble warrant anything? Why didn't the held arm on the three-pointer warrant anything? If the standard is what got applied in that August game, then the standard should be applied everywhere. Otherwise, you're not running a league, you're running a preference. The suspension. Everyone argued about. Let me also tell you about the technical foul situation, because this part still gets people heated. At some point during the season, Caitlin Clark picked up what was listed as her 8th technical foul of the year. By the rulebook, that triggers an automatic 1-game suspension. She served the suspension. But then, and this is where the conspiracy theories really started, the technical was later reviewed and reversed. Now I'm not going to sit here and tell you the league is out to get her or that the league is out to protect her. Both extremes sound ridiculous when you actually think about them. The more likely answer is that the situation was ambiguous. She was talking to an official, and there's been a long-running league-wide conversation about how strictly to police player-referee interactions. But here's what I want to focus on. She picked up her 8th, and she was suspended. And then folks on both sides of the argument are still arguing, which means even her punishment became a culture war issue. That's the strange place we are with Caitlin Clark coverage. Everything she does, every stat line, every whistle, every tech becomes a referendum on something bigger than basketball. And that's a problem, because basketball played properly should be about basketball. All right, let me show you something I think you'll find shocking, because it's the stat I dropped the video's trailer with, and I want to walk through it slowly. Why 5 beats 4 matters more than you think you already know the stat. But let me tell you what it actually means. A 30-10 game isn't just a good game. It's a perfect storm. It means a player scored enough to carry the offense and distributed enough to make her teammates better. It means the defense couldn't stop her one-on-one, and the help rotations couldn't cut off her reads, and the box score still shows she won both battlegrounds. That's why only 9 players have ever done it in the entire history of this league. And 4 of those incidents belong to other players, spread out over decades. Caitlin Clark has 5. She has them in basically 2 seasons of professional play. The gap is so wide that you can't even call it a rivalry with the rest of the league. It's a gap. It's a different category. It's the kind of gap that you see once in a generation. And she built it while being pummeled. Imagine what the stat would look like if she were getting to the line 10, 12 times a game, like some other top scorers. It wouldn't be 9 total in league history. It would be closer to 20. She is underproducing on this category relative to the contact she's receiving. That's the stat that should make every coach, every GM, every league executive pause and ask what is happening on the floor. What? The arm scratches. Tell us. Now I want to talk about something you probably saw floating around social media. The image of Caitlin Clark's arm with red marks all over it after a game. She had scratches, real ones, not psychological ones, not symbolic ones. You could see them, little streaks, big streaks, the kind of marks you get when someone grabs harder than the ball. It got shared, it got screenshotted, it got laughed at by some people, it got defended by other people. But the raw fact is, those marks prove contact. They prove grab attempts. They prove defenders are reaching in a way that wouldn't show up on a traditional box score. And if those aren't fouls, explain why. If the league's own definition of a foul includes illegal contact with a player, and what you're seeing on her arm is the result of illegal contact, then either the definition needs to be enforced or the definition needs to be changed. You don't get to have both. Physical evidence of grabbing and a stream of 0 whistles. Pick one. The 30-10 against Dallas that finally got some whistles. Okay, there is a counterpoint in this story, and I want to be fair about it. In a recent game against the Dallas Wings, Caitlin Clark did get to the line. She shot 13 free throws in a loss. Some people said, see, the whistles are there. So let's go into that one honestly. Yes, 13 free throws. But it's also worth noting that she went to the line that many times because defenders were still grabbing her all game. The whistles didn't show up because the contact stopped. The whistles showed up because the contact was so obvious that even the officials couldn't ignore it. That's not proof that the system works. That's proof that the system only works when the contact is too blatant to ignore. The standard should not be only call it when it's undeniable. The standard should be call it when it's a foul. Period. If the only time the whistle blows is when a defender leaves a visible scratch, that's not officiating. That's damage control. The referee. Question. Everyone has to answer. I want to take a breath here because I want to address the elephant in the room. Are the referees biased against Caitlin Clark? I'm not going to give you a yes or no. The data is the data. The pattern is the pattern. What I will say is this. If you're an official and you watch a player take 17% of the league's flagrants in a season, and you watch her get visibly scratched and grabbed on drives and still not get called for half the contact that would draw a whistle if she was on the other end of the play, you owe it to your profession to ask yourself a hard question, not because of the player, because of the league. Because if you're willing to let this go unaddressed, other players on other teams will start to learn the same lesson. If it works on her without punishment, it'll work on the next star. That's how officiating standards erode. Not from one big bad call, from 1,000 tiny decisions that everyone collectively decided not to sweat. What this means going forward. Let me wrap up where this leaves us. Right now, Caitlin Clark is the most fouled player in the league, a confirmed statistical reality. She's also producing at a rate that nobody in WNBA history is even close to matching. The two facts together are forcing a conversation the league probably wishes would just go away. But it won't go away because she has 530/10 games. Because she has the 40-point, 10-assist game that didn't exist before she got to the league. Because her arm still has the marks from the last game. Because somebody literally poked her in the eye and nothing happened. And because DiJonai Carrington's name keeps coming up. Whether you think that's intentional or coincidental, the name keeps showing up. In the playoff tape, in the foul debates, in the eye poke conversation, in the ejection that finally forced a suspension-worthy response. And every single time it does, the same uncomfortable question comes back. If someone did this to anyone else in this league, would the league respond the same way? Comment below. I want the honest answers. Sky fans, Fever fans, neutral fans. I want to see who actually wants to deal with this and who wants to pretend it's not happening. Because if we don't deal with it, the league never will. Final tease. Because this story isn't done. Before I let you go, keep your eyes on the next Fever game. Keep your eyes on the next Sky game. Keep your eyes on every time the league office releases a statement about officiating consistency. Because what just happened with DiJonai Carrington, what just happened with that ejection, what just happened with the eye poke that went uncalled, what just happened with the arm scratches, what just happened with the 45-point game, what just happened with the fifth 30 and 10, that is not a finished story. That is the opening chapter. And if you think the league is going to quietly fix the officiating behind the scenes and pretend this season played out normally, you haven't been paying attention. This is going to spill over into next season, and the season after that, and the next collective bargaining agreement, and the next round of expansion, and the next wave of player discipline. The numbers don't go away. The film doesn't go away. The arm scratches don't go away. And if you thought today was the end of this debate, you are about to be very surprised. Hit subscribe if you made it this far, because the next breakdown is coming, and it is going to rank every uncalled contact play from this season in order, with timestamps, with slow motion, with the official statements if available. That video is going to make this one look tame. Drop your honest take in the comments. Be respectful. Be brutal if you have to. We're all here to figure this out together. Share this with one person who still thinks the whistles are even, and I'll see you on the next one.